All right, guys, I appreciate everybody watching. As you can see, I am still struggling to get used to this modern technology. Apparently, everyone else can podcast, and I am too tired to do it properly. Johnny, how are you?
I'm doing well, James. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing all right. So, for some people, they haven't seen you in a while. For others, they have seen you, and you've been working on a book, which is kind of why we're here and we're having the conversation. If anybody can see that on the screen, the Courtroom of Atheism. Um, this was a fun read, and it was interesting because I've gotten to know you over the past couple of years. So, little stories within the book they came out because I'm like, hey, I knew who he was talking about.
Sure. And I'm assuming too, even those that I've interacted with over the years, I'm sure after reading the book, they'll probably get to know me even better and learn some things that they did not know before. So, I wanted to make it an entertaining read as well. And hopefully I did that.
One thing I appreciated from the book is you don't sugarcoat things when you are telling things that you did online, some things that you regretted, some things that you maybe would have done differently. You are very straight to the point that you did that and you own it. And I appreciated that because sometimes when people do books, they fluff it. It's like they put themselves out to be like, um, that I didn't have any trolley moments online and that I didn't do these things. But I loved like the overall theme about like Christians relying more on Jesus. What kind of made you narrow that down, like to say, we need God, it's not about us?
Well, to start with, regarding being candid and open and honest, I've never been afraid to be self-deprecating. I mean, I can take inventory of myself, and I can realize when I've said something that was untoward, over the line, um, unnecessary, and etc. And I'm just not. I'm not ashamed to admit it. And in the book, there are a few occasions where I detail some of the a few stories from my earlier life that on the surface, of course, I'm not proud of doing, but the way the way the story turned out, the end of the story was something that is better than better than the beginning, I guess you could say. But that's here again. I'm not afraid to be candid and honest, and I do not like sugarcoating. I think that is one of the things that is wrong in many of the churches today. They've started to adopt, an attitude of appeasement. They want to sound more, uh, soothing to one's ears. They want the church to be comfortable, and I'm not like that. I like telling the truth as I know it to be, and oftentimes, truth does hurt, and I don't think it's beneficial to anybody to circumvent the truth, just to appease someone or to try to make them feel more comfortable. And you read the book, you noticed that, and I think a lot of people can appreciate that. And it was just similar to the discussion I had with Matt Dillahunty. He stated as well. He said, "You know what? I appreciate Johnny's honesty." Yeah, he stated his position in the theology he subscribes to in a way that often isn't heard, and that's what I tried to maintain in the book, is to keep a theme that is just not something that is simply rehashed. I wanted it to be different, eye-opening, engaging, truthful, provocative as well. And I think truth, whether people like it or not, I think it is still a breath of fresh air to hear. And that is something that I think is very important in telling a story.
Yeah, one thing I appreciated from it was just the reinforcement that the book does all throughout the pages, which is that um, you need to rely on God. That it's God who softens hearts and minds. It's not about me learning the best way to present the cosmological argument or the best way to explain the contingency. That ultimately God will use who God uses and what God uses, and the gospel's powerful. And I love too at the beginning of each chapter, you put like a verse or a quotation, and I kind of loved going into that.
Yeah, I wanted to make something pertinent to the next chapter that I was, beginning to talk about, and to revisit your question regarding Jesus doing all the work. Well, I'm sure many people grew up in a church setting that was under the idea or the philosophy, perhaps, you need to proselytize to others, and if you do not, or if you fail to do it the proper way, then when you stand before God on Judgment Day, God's going to ask you, why didn't you tell your neighbor about Christ, or why didn't you do this, or why didn't you show this person that, or why didn't you take time with this individual, almost to suggest that someone else's salvation is really, uh, in some ways, on your shoulders, like you have a burden to get others saved. And that is one of the things in the book that I wanted to relieve the reader of thinking, because it's actually not biblical. I mean, yes, we are to preach the good news of Christ. You've heard of the Great Commission. We are to talk to others about Jesus Christ, um, and repentance and salvation and forgiveness and all the things. But um, salvation is someone else's salvation. Well, even my own is not based on really me. It is based on God's decision to choose whom He will show mercy to, and that's exactly what God does. Everyone that God has chosen to redeem will be redeemed. Now, God may use um, people in different ways to bring that about, but God is not placing salvation in your hands, and He's not placing someone else's salvation in your hands. So, in other words, um, if someone is not saved, it is not your fault. And if someone is saved, it is not to your credit, because God gets all the credit, and God is not going to He's not going to share His glory. So when I say it relieves people of thinking there is a burden to bring others to Christ, that's not a relief of duty. We still are to go out and to tell others about Christ. That is something we should, you know, not only dutifully um, conduct ourselves with, but we should do it because we enjoy talking about Christ to others. So, but I wanted to make sure that that was one part, that was one element of the book that I wanted to address. And, I think a lot of people reading those different elements that I speak of will actually be relieved. And not only that, I think they'll take away from it having a better appreciation of God's sovereignty.
No, for sure. And I want to just kind of throw out some of the titles for people for the chapters. Number 2, Fetching Sticks. Chapter 3, Moving the Goalpost. Chapter 5, I liked that one, Swing and a Miss. Um, when you guys start getting into these, for anybody who decides to check out this book, which the Amazon link is in, Johnny made it very affordable. I talked him down from the $500 price point. Um, it's very, very reasonably priced. You can get a Kindle version for around $10 as well. Um, I thoroughly enjoyed the read, and I remember the first time that I met Johnny. I was an atheist, and I had seen Johnny online, and I had seen this. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go in, and I'm gonna get the better of this person. I'm gonna be the guy who puts Johnny Haas in his place. And so I remember on there, and Johnny caught me with something. And I knew when he caught me, and I saw him going to like remove me from the video. And I'm just like, don't you dare remove me from the video till I get a chance to try to, vindicate my own arrogance.
Yeah, vindicate your own arrogance. Um, the debates. I mean, you and I have both been in discussions together, and as you said, when we originally met, you and I, would be in debates as opponents of one another. But I've done this for years. You've been doing this for several years. Um, and one of the things that I think I got carried away with more was trying to win a debate. And as I talk about in the book, at the end of the day, winning a debate might mean that you've showed your opponent that you're you're more scholarly. You have you're more knowledgeable about various issues, whether it's science or whatever you're talking about, and you may be able to argue in a way and understand how to examine words and catch people in traps and embarrass and humiliate your opponent. You may be thought of as a formidable opponent when someone wants to engage you. But that does not win anybody to Christ. It just may win you some sort of accolade as being respectable in the debate arena. But, here again, winning debates does not win people to Christ, and there's people that are far more knowledgeable and astute, it's their profession to debate. You have people like William Lane Craig and others. But even watching those debates, you can watch those guys stand before an audience, take questions from audience, whatever. And even at the end of the day, these guys don't win anyone to Christ. And I noticed that, and I thought, wow, that is interesting. So no matter how much I tried to study the art of debate and discussion and things like that, I still noticed the people that were more intelligent than I am and more skilled in debate than I am, they were not winning people to Christ either. And so I thought, well, if someone like William Lane Craig is not winning people to Christ after holding a debate in a university, what makes me think I can win someone to Christ? But that also prompted a lot of questions that I had myself. What is it that makes the atheist reject every single argument presented to them? I can understand if if someone wants to reject one or two, three arguments, but when they reject every single one, and there's many, there's something else underneath the reason for why they reject those arguments. Because it's one thing to say, hey, look, I don't believe in God. I don't see any evidence. There's not going to be any evidence. Therefore, I'm not even going to try to ask you to prove or show anything. But a lot of atheists don't operate like that. They give a false impression that they are open-minded. They do want to see evidence, and they tend to make people think that, yes, if they saw evidence, they would be compelled by it and then concede it. That's what they portray. So, and that's exactly why Christians, will often respond to that in a way like, hey, show me the evidence. A Christian will immediately try to start showing them evidence because the Christian even believes that, okay, maybe these people just don't see what I see and they need help with seeing and understanding and explanation for God, etc. But that's very deceptive. And I also outlined that in the book as well. And it's something that I didn't really pick up on in the beginning because I think I was too focused on trying to beat my opponent in a debate. But as I said, Gipsy, and you know this too. Beating someone uh, does not bring them to Christ. Someone losing a debate therefore doesn't come to Christ as a result. Um,
Yeah, I
so
mean
there's
it's not Highlander, like somebody's not gonna, now adopt and take this power or this persona. Like, and then I love to quote you throughout in your book, I believe, and you've said it to me a few times. So if it's not in your book, I apologize. But you quote Penn
yes,
about, in these conversations. I think it's very important that we as Christians do what you were indicating in the book and actually like be honest with people. Like the reason why we have these conversations is because we care about you. It's like we believe a bus is coming and that bus is going to hit you. And we want to warn you about the bus, but it wouldn't be very loving if I was quiet and I didn't tell you about the bus.
exactly. It's if you believe someone is walking into a trap they don't see. Well, if you care about them, you want to warn them. Hey, there's a trap you're about to fall into. But by saying nothing, really actually shows that you don't care about them. And as Penn says, these people that say, hey, don't talk to me about religion, just keep it to yourself, just be quiet. Um, I don't think they really understand the true love behind proselytizing, and it is indeed to warn people because, as he said, if he believes Penn if he believed that a truck was bearing down on you and you don't believe it, well, there comes a point where he tackles you. And this is similar. However, um, that is really not one of the main uh, points that I'm trying to illustrate in the book. Is hey, Christians, you need to double down on your efforts to proselytize. That's actually not really the point. We should, again, as the Great Commission calls us to do, spread the gospel. But it's not a matter of um, the reason why people, again, aren't saved is because we're not doing enough. We need to do more. That's actually, here again, that's not really the point of the book. The point of the book is it's one thing to ask someone why they don't believe, but I think it's more important to understand why they don't believe. And that is one of the key things that I point out in the book, exactly why people don't believe. Now, yeah, some people could say, well, all you have to do is ask an atheist why they don't believe, and they'll tell you. Well, that's that's what they say, but according to Scripture, um, God is the final authority on the reasons why people don't believe. So I'm going to go with what God said.
No, no. I mean, I think that's all excellent points. And I think um, one part in particular in the book that I liked was um, when you were talking about, you weren't always the kind of person that you wanted to be. But then when you were that person, you got to look back at what you've done in the past and you got to make amends and you got to do things that, um, not that anything can necessarily cover a wrong, but that you actively pursued ways to help people, ways to do different things.
Uh, sure. I don't really say I have many regrets in life. Um, if I could say that, my I don't ever regret anything that has happened to me, no matter how bad. Um, I guess I could say I regret hurting others, but here again, I think there is opportunities that come along in the future that sometimes do allow a person to make amends and right wrongs. And when that happens, I think it's very powerful for both you and maybe the other party that was involved. Uh, Forgiveness is, that also changes hearts as well. A heartfelt forgiveness. I'm not talking about empty flattery, but yeah, there's a lot of there's a lot of things in my past that I'm not proud of. But to say would I like to do things over? No. I mean, life is life, and it makes us who we are today. And I think a lot of times that you know even in Scripture talks about God will turn things around for good to those that love Him. And so I can't really say I wish I could just do things over again. However, it sounds contradictory, but yes, uh, I have issue with myself for doing things that have hurt others in the past. But I think God can use those and turn them around for good as well.
Yeah, I think back that if I could go back and redo things, even bad things that I've done or mistakes that I've made, I don't know that I would do that because I learned so much from having, been through that and having done this because I learned humility. Um, I learned to check my pride. I learned that, hey, I'm not the top of the level where I thought I was. Like the first time you get knocked out in a fight, um, you completely understand where you are on that pecking order. Because before
Sure,
that, I didn't really know where I stood.
sure, exactly. Well, let me ask you a question. If you could choose a couple or one, whatever, of your favorite chapters in the book, which one or ones would that be right off the top of your head?
I liked the fetching sticks because I thought that was a very good part for Christians. Because a lot of times on these debate forums, atheists like to argue from the I'm not convinced atheist position. And so a lot of times it requires where a Christian will go out and they'll send you links, they'll send you sources, and then the atheist will say, I'm not convinced. And then, you'll go back out. So I think it gives you a grounding to think when is the right time to go get sources and to engage, and when is it just, pointless.
Right, right. I think so too. Along the way, and I missed it several times. Atheists will often, whether they really know what they're doing or not, I'm not sure. Perhaps subconsciously, they'll give certain hints and indicators that they're actually not looking for evidence. And some atheists will outright, say, "Hey, look," and I talk about that in the book as well. One individual that I was arguing with said, "Hey, look, stupid. Uh, we're not looking for evidence. We're just, uh, you know, looking to see you Christians fumble over yourselves and fall all over the place trying to prove your God to us." And there were times along the way that I would get those hints and either overlook it or not really give consideration to it. But that is actually very telling, and I firmly believe that is the position of of what an atheist is. They're really not looking for evidence because they've already rejected the evidence. So if they're asking for evidence which they have already rejected, they're just asking you to give them more of what they've already rejected. It's a game, but um, atheists are looking for ways to justify their unbelief because atheism itself is not a claim to knowledge. They don't claim to know whether there is a God or not. They don't take that that position. So, in my opinion, I think atheists are perhaps a little restless that they can't be sure there is no God. I think Richard Dawkins stated verbatim that he could not be sure that there is no God. And I think for many atheists, Um, I believe that bothers them. So I think that what atheists are really trying to do is to continually find ways to justify their unbelief. And they use Christians to do that. And that is one of the highlights in the book that I talk about, that atheists are actually getting Christians to help them justify their unbelief. And Christians unknowingly uh, argue and get in these debates, which a lot of them are traps and etc. They actually will give atheists justification for their unbelief based on how they answer questions. And that is one of the things that I wanted to highlight, that I think Christians need to know.
No, I mean, it makes sense because if I'm talking online with somebody and if they really want to know the Kalam cosmological argument, um, I always I shrug my shoulders sometimes if I get if I'm in a debate group and they want to talk to a theist, but like when I get a personal message on my main Facebook page and they're like, I need you to defend the Kalam. Well, there's better resources I can send you to. Like, if you're wanting to see a good defense of the Kalam, I'll shoot you a William Lane Craig video. Contingency arguments. Like, I can explain these things to you, but it's like if you're not wanting to actually dig into it or know the arguments to reject it, then it's kind of a fruitless endeavor. Now, if you just want to know what does this Christian believe about these things, then we can for sure.
Yeah, and you know, for years as a Christian, I was arguing with atheists, and I would present them with the Kalam cosmological argument, or a Fibonacci argument, or an ontological argument, or all these different uh, arguments that have, those have actually been rehashed. They're age old, and a lot of the Christian apologists use them. But those arguments do not get people to Christ. Arguing about the cosmological argument may be something if you wanted to bring someone to deism, or if you just wanted to bring them to a position where they are going to concede that yes, there is some creator. Okay, that's fine, but that's not what Christians are. That's not what Christians should be doing, because just getting someone to concede there is a creator does not really concede, as far as they're concerned, who the creator is. So the Kalam cosmological argument, for example, does not argue who the creator is. It just argues that there is a sort of an arbitrary or ambiguous creator of some sort behind the universe, which is exactly why I said before that, you know, the cosmological argument, ontological argument, teleological argument, all of these different arguments does not get people to Christ. And, for years I argued those arguments. And even doing that, I very rarely did I hear an atheist even concede those arguments. But here again, as a Christian, it's really pointless to argue for some arbitrary, undefined God, because I can understand why someone is not a Christian. Now, mind you, for many years I struggled to understand how someone cannot believe in a God, at least, or some sort of supernatural, intelligent creator. I never really understood that. But here again, coming to be convinced that there is a creator does not tell you who the creator is. So it's pointless to argue those different arguments we see apologists doing all the time.
Yeah, I think you and I had a conversation about it seems like there's a sharp divide to where you go from being a Christian to an atheist or a Muslim to being an atheist. But you had mentioned that it actually seems better for there to be like a middle ground. Like, why wouldn't you go from atheism to deism to Christianity, or Christianity to deism to atheism. It seems like, why would like canceling out one religion or one perspective lead you to jump polar opposites?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I always thought it was interesting when I would hear an atheist say, well, after reading the Bible, they became an atheist. Well, what did they do? Skip deism? Did they just forget about the 4,000 other religions? I mean, I first thought it was absurd to say that, but once I studied theology, uh, it now makes sense that someone would read the Bible and become an atheist because if you don't like God, you're certainly not going to like the Bible, because the Bible talks about who the character of God is. It does talk about ultimate accountability and judgment and punishment, etc. And I can't think of anything further away from God than atheism. In other words, if you wanted to run from God and you wanted to get as far away from God as you possibly could, well, atheism would provide that for you. So, yes, it does make sense to me why someone would read the Bible and then become an atheist, because it's actually because of God that they became an atheist, because that is a response to God. And so it makes a little more sense nowadays once I see it in that light.
No, for sure. Um, so, how has the book been received by people? You gotten positive feedback, negative feedback? Uh, Other people enjoying it besides myself?
Yes, everyone is enjoying it, not just some. I mean, did you even think it was possible that even one person would not like this book? I mean, what's wrong with you, Gibson? Come on. Um, no, for the most part, a lot of people that have ordered, they either haven't finished reading it yet. I've talked to several people that have said, I'm going to read it over vacation, or I'm finishing up school and then I'm going to read it, or whatever the case. So there's been several that have not really given their comments on it yet. Now, some have messaged me and said, well, hey, I've started reading it. I like it so far. This is something that is different from what I'm usually hearing, and it is. Um, I think when a person reads this book, they will have a different perspective of non-believers and why people don't believe, and understand why people don't believe. I think they will come away with a different perspective that they haven't really heard before, to be honest with you. So, but with anything I say, Gibbsy, I mean, here again, when you try to maintain telling the truth, truth is going to bother some people. Not everyone is going to agree with the theology that I subscribe to. Um, so I'm not necessarily certain that everyone is just going to, rejoice with gladness after they read it. I think it will probably bother some people. And I don't necessarily think most of the people that'll bother will be atheists, although it's not directed toward an audience of atheists. But I think the people that it will bother will actually be those that are in some of these different churches. But that's okay. I don't mind being disagreed with. I believe in what I'm saying. I back it up with scripture, and I welcome anyone to challenge what they've read.
No, for sure. Like in the very end of the book, like you give your email address that says, "Hey, if you've read this, you have feedback, thoughts, send it. Send them your way." I also like, and we talked about the quotes earlier. Uh, the one that I really enjoyed, I don't have it directly in front of me, but it was like, "There's no good answers to wrong questions."
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And there's some other good ones. Like let me flip through the book. All sin, it seems to me, is the sin of unbelief, is the most dishonoring to God. And each one of these chapters starts with a quote, and then there's also a Bible verse towards the end, which I kind of liked that too, because if I didn't read it all in one sitting, I could read it, and then you left with a little bit of scripture or something else to think on. And then you referenced, I won't drop their name, but you mentioned another mutual friend of ours who was an atheist, a stout atheist, and then she later converted.
Mhm.
Um, you had mentioned that that kind of was like an impact on you. Uh, how did you process that when she converted?
Um, are you talking about the individual? Because I talk about one individual that converted from atheism, but they didn't convert to Christianity; they converted to Islam. Um, I'm not sure exactly which one you're
That's the one. That's the mutual friend.
that converted to Islam.
Yeah. Hmm.
Uh, well, what was interesting to me, and I found this with most of the atheists that I've spoken with that have converted. Um, One of the things that I noticed is like Christians, for example, that were never atheists. They will spend all day trying to talk with atheists and provide evidence and points and argumentation and all these other things. But those that are former atheists did not seem to really want to have much to do with it. They didn't want to really argue, almost as if to suggest that they really understood why people are atheists, and the Christians that were never atheists that argue with them didn't really understand that. So, and I saw that with this person as well. And I asked the person, I said, now that you're a Muslim, which they're atheist, they now believe in a supreme creator. I said, now that you're a theist, how do you look back at the time you were an atheist? And she said, well, I realized that I wasn't thinking rationally. And I thought that was interesting for her to say that. So, in other words, it wasn't about evidence. It was being the reason why she was an atheist. It was about her, I guess, perception, her thought process, her rationale, how she viewed the world around her, the way she perceived, uh, a worldview. I've never met a former atheist that has said, "Yeah, I was an atheist up until one day I just happened to see evidence." I've never heard an atheist say that. It has always been something to do with I was thinking irrationally, or it was a condition of my heart towards God is the reason why I was an atheist. I just have never met an atheist, a former atheist, excuse me, that has stated, yeah, one day I woke up and someone presented an argument, or I did some sort of research and found something that I never saw before. I never got that from atheists. And in the book, I talk about another individual that was a former atheist. I asked him, I said, look, out of all the people that should be arguing with atheists, it should be you guys. You know what it's like to be an atheist. I don't. I said, but I never see these former atheists with a sort of zeal to argue with their other with other atheists. And he told me, he said, well, I tell you, Johnny, he said, you're really wasting your time arguing with the type of atheist that you've been arguing with. He said, you'd probably do better spending some time with people that are either on the fence or soft agnostics, whatever the case. I don't know. He said, but no, the people that you're arguing with are foolish. And I thought that was quite interesting coming from a former atheist. But I got that all the time. I mean, it was always something to do with the way a person thought, their rationale. It was never about atheists, or excuse me, never about evidence. So that started to make me think. And during that time, as I say before, atheism became a study for me. I became fascinated with unbelief because I thought there's just got to be something more to the unbeliever than just merely, oh, I don't see evidence. I don't believe that. And that's what prompted a study in unbelief.
No, no, and we're about 10 minutes over. I told you I'd only keep you half an hour, and it's 40 minutes. I mean, I appreciate you waiving that $500 speaking fee for me today, Johnny. Um,
Yes.
let
Yeah.
me say hello to the chat real quick. Titan, always a pleasure. Titan is one of my atheist friends. Mr. John Lee. John says hello, Johnny.
What's
Uh,
up, John?
Hussein, appreciate you watching. I see you from time to time in the lives. Normalizing atheism. Um, he's a good guy. Goes by the handle Pasta Mike. Um, he is an atheist who's actively trying to make these conversations better. So check out his channel. Let me see who else is in the chat. I think there's a few more, but I can't get all the comments to load up. AK is in the chat. She says, James is late. This was the very beginning. Yes, I was 5 minutes late, and I do apologize. Like I said, Johnny waived his $500 speaking fee, and I was not very gracious in considering his time.
No, you were not, Gypsy. But I'm a man of forgiveness, so I will forgive you this time. But if anybody wants to pick up the Courtroom of Atheism, they can do so on Amazon. It's also in Kindle version, as you said in the beginning. Um, it is not a boring read. Now, I'm biased. I mean, I wrote it, but if anything you take away from it, it is definitely not boring. And there are things that are provocative, and I think there is some things within the book that are going to be hard pills to swallow as well. But it's definitely different. And Gipsy, you read it. I'm
Mhm.
sure you at least agree that it is definitely not a boring read.
Yeah, I mean, I was happy, and then I was mad, and then I was enjoyable, and then I got mad again because some of the examples, like I told people, um, earlier on in this video, John does not sugarcoat some of the provocative things that he said to atheists to spark conversation, to make people think. So I don't really want to give too much about what's in the book because my goal would be for you, if you're a Christian, to grab this, take a look at it. If you're an atheist and you watch it, please bear in mind that it wasn't written directly to you, but if you do decide to buy it, John will appreciate it. He worked for like 6, 7 months on this thing. I think it was what a month after the last debate with Matt Dillahunty.
Yeah, that was what really sealed the deal for me as far as wanting to write a book. Was from the last discussion I had, which was with Matt Dillahunty. But yeah, I started in November, and I thought I would be done with it before then. But no, it took about 6 months to write. But I want to say this as well: the book is actually not a bash atheists book. Now it talks about atheists, but is not just focused on berating and bashing atheists. So, if you're an atheist and you just want to happen to read it, here again, it's not directed towards you, but there are some things that perhaps you can glean from it. But no, it's not just merely an attack on atheists. So I think people will enjoy the read.
No, definitely. Um, Once again, thank you to the chat. Johnny, thank you for joining me. The link to the book is in the description of the video. Um, I would like to know your guys' thoughts too after you read it too, just because I'm curious as I've read the book and I've kind of absorbed some of the things in it. So I don't have a very long outro, so I'm going to kick the outro, talk to John a minute or two after. Thank you for everybody who was watching, providing I can do the outro. All
Well,
right,
Gipsy,
so I stayed on a minute after that, real quick, live, just to let you guys know. All my friends are yelling at me because I don't tell anybody to like and subscribe to my channel. So if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. Broadcast is ending now, though. Thanks again, guys.